Welcome to MACMA's Audience Architect, where we are crafting the future of audience engagement. Our mission is to dive into the intricacies of the ever-evolving media and publishing landscape through the sharp lens of audience and marketing professionals. Each episode will unravel the meaning and perspective on trends that are shaping the industry. Welcome to episode 13 of the Audience Architect podcast. I'm your host, Amanda Lansall. Let's architect the future. Today's guests are AnnMarie Wills, co-founder and CEO of Leverage Lab, and Rob McLaughlin, founder and CEO of Audiences. For nearly 30 years, AnnMarie has been obsessed with the transformative power of customer data for media enterprises. As a senior audience, data, and product development executive with notable media organizations like Knight Ridder, Penton, now Informa, and Source Media, now Horizont, AnnMarie established herself as a leading authority on monetizing audience data for media and leads Leverage Labs in the first-party data revolution. Rob McLaughlin is a fanatic for all things first-party data and activation. From London, England, Rob's formative career was within large corporations and then Sky Comcast, leading data activation across their European consumer and media businesses. Since then, Rob went on to found and exit a consulting firm and now leads the tech company Audiences as founder and CEO. In today's episode, AnnMarie, Rob, and I will delve into emerging technologies that empower publishers and media companies to deliver personalized experiences while keeping privacy at the forefront. We'll explore innovative concepts like contextual targeting and zero-knowledge proofs, revolutionizing our approach to privacy. We'll discuss some compelling ROI stories like how audience exclusion can help tailor content and ads to exclude certain audiences, making targeting much more relevant. Lookalike modeling is another game changer, using data to find the most relevant new audiences. And we'll talk about personalization for high-value audience targets, where we customize experiences to really engage and retain those high-value users. We'll touch on first-party data strategies, including techniques for collecting data directly from users with their consent. Plus, we'll talk about the importance of collaboration with other publishers, media companies, and tech providers to establish best practices for privacy across the industry. Engaging high-value audiences is another key topic. We'll discuss focusing on quality over quantity to identify and engage your most valuable users. We'll delve into content consumption insights to better tailor your offerings and share strategies for reducing churn, keeping your audience engaged, and reducing turnover. We'll also look at how to implement these changes within your organization. We'll share tips on introducing and managing these new technologies and how to get your sales team on board with data-driven decision-making and intelligence-based programs. You'll learn about developing high-quality programs based on solid data and insights, and the importance of integrating privacy by design into every aspect of your data strategy. Leadership buy-in and cross-departmental collaboration are crucial too. We'll explore how to ensure all departments are aligned and working together on privacy-compliant data strategies, and how to secure buy-in from top executives to drive these initiatives forward. Throughout our discussion, we'll emphasize the ethical imperative for publishers and media companies to prioritize user privacy while maintaining a sustainable business model. It's essential to gather, engage, and use data in ways that respect user privacy, leading to better outcomes for both your business and your audience. Let's give a warm welcome to AnnMarie and Rob. Hi to you both.
Hi there.
Hey there, great to be on here.
So both of you are very involved in all things audience, privacy, engaging your audiences. Give me a little bit of background into kind of why you took the approach that you have within your careers and why you've made those things such a high priority.
Yeah, for sure. Like our origin stories.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I'll go first. So mine begins working in major metropolitan newspaper at a time when the newspaper industry was starting to crash. Was given sort of an edict from the organization to really sustain the churn that we were seeing in subscriptions. And my channel that I was focused on was direct mail. So I had a lot of data to work with. And one of the things that we saw as we were sort of looking across the industry was that a lot of people were not personalizing any of the messaging that was going to these individuals. So we took a very personalized approach to both offers and renewals. And lo and behold, talking to people, saying things to them that resonate for them, asking for data and using it in really smart ways to build more personalized experiences pays off in improved outcomes. So that was like, I was hooked from that moment forward, and obsessed with the idea that you can take data from an organization, take data from a person, take data and information or behavioral insights that you get from their behaviors and transactions and what they're consuming, turn that into an insight, and then deliver that back in a personalized message. And it pays off in every way.
That makes total sense. And it's something I think over the years too, that has just, people talk about it a lot, but we don't see it a lot. And so how do we really start making that mind shift as a whole to get everybody to actually start executing on those strategies, those true data-driven strategies? Rob, I'm really excited to talk to both of you. And Rob, I'm really excited to have you here because I think you bring a really unique view to a lot of this, being from an area that very much has the GDPR at the forefront of everything that you do. So I'd love to kind of hear a little bit more about your background and what's, really driving the direction that you've gone and with building out audiences and, why the approach that your company takes is so privacy compliant, especially in today's landscape, and how those of us here in the US, right, where we have a little bit different of approach to privacy, how that just it benefits everybody regardless of where you're at.
Sure. And Amanda, I think it's really interesting thinking almost, from the perspective of the United States. I think you genuinely can look at Europe and see perhaps like a hothouse for privacy, but also data security regulation, and where the different countries in their interpretation of GDPR and different organizations in their desire to commercialize their use of data, like how they've tried to work it out in successful and less successful ways, because there's a real spectrum, and hopefully there's a lot of interesting things there. And you know what, like as AnnMarie said, in my origin story, it was a genuine frustration that data wasn't being used in almost a programmatic way to inform user, subscriber, customer experience. And I started out in the field of web analytics back in 2004, 2005, and it's really cool, like in 2004, 2005, to be able to like understand people's behavior like on the internet, and what at the time, and at least for a decade after that, was still cool, was that you'd be able to draw insights, and maybe even if you're kind of business orientated as an analyst, make a PowerPoint deck about the amazing trends that you found. And you know what, like maybe for a while that was cool, but the thing which frustrated me was all of those amazing insights about behavior would live and then die in that PowerPoint deck. And like further to that the behavioral data wasn't linked to customer data, or maybe what we might call CRM data. And you know what, like it's the bringing together of the behavioral data with the customer data and the activation of it. It's that combined stuff that's my chosen hill to die on, if you like. Why I care so much about, and audiences, we care so much about the activation of data. And just to finish on what we found was in Europe, the biggest barrier to activation of data is navigating privacy and data security compliance. Yeah, and as one of our clients recently said, once we were able to navigate privacy and data security compliance, then we could dare to dream how we could get value from our data in advertising channels, which I I couldn't have put it better myself.
You bring up such a good point too. I think for so long, a lot of people viewed the GDPR, and potentially still do, but the GDPR and even some of the US comprehensive privacy laws that have either gone into effect or on the horizon, they viewed it as a barrier, as opposed to, if you actually have a good, solid privacy framework in place, it enables broader use of the data, and doing so in a compliant and respectful way, right? And so I think that's extremely important. And, I think this is a good kind of segue into what technologies are out there that are really, preserving privacy along the way. What, in your all's experience, what emerging technologies have been out there that really help publishers and media companies deliver personalized experiences while minimizing data collection and also preserving the privacy component for the audiences?
Yeah, I can jump in. So, our experience at Leverage Lab, we're very much about building the privacy and secure environment for customer data in a way that it can be activated upon for personalizing the customer experience, for creating new revenue streams. So, taking on the role of a guardian and a sort of, tenant of another enterprise's customer data is a very important thing. And there's a lot of, seriousness about that. So going down the path of, using cloud-based technologies that sort of support, a high level of security, putting my organization through its paces around ISO certification and compliance, taking all the necessary steps first on the security side so that we are preserving the privacy of the data itself is critical. And I think that's what attracted, our organization, us to a technology like Audiences. And I know that Rob will go into some detail about that, but when you think about activation, what you're really saying is you have to take data from one, create a segment of an audience, create some sort of insight around a behavior so that you can isolate individual humans, right? Their PII. And then we need to somehow represent that PII in a platform where we can then send an advertising message. I mean, to break it down simply, that's what it is. And what I was seeing in the marketplace were, we're taking so much time and energy to put together the secure environment, train every single human around that data so that they won't, get caught up in a phishing email scheme and, create this problem. So we're doing all that work. And then we're just downloading a list and putting it in an email and throwing it into a platform. Like it just got broken there. And so that, again, I know Rob will probably go into some detail about the platform, but looking for technologies that enable data collaboration in a completely secure way is becoming more the standard. There's a great report that just came out by Winterberry Group that talks about data collaboration platforms as like a new standard piece of tech in your stack. If you're going to if you're going to activate, you need platforms that allow you to do that in a completely compliant way. So I think that's at least where we're coming from.
And I'd really like to add to that, and you know what, like what we would call like the on-platform experience. So that's the platform which like publishers and advertisers deliver on their websites and in their apps. I think they've, that's a relatively mature like state of affairs. Yeah. And to speak, from a European perspective, the steps have been taken to ensure that when you're using third-party technologies and you've got people involved beyond the owner of the domain of the website or the owner of the app, that consents are collected and the use of third-party technologies, notably cookies, that the user is informed, and there's some really interesting sort of precedent around legitimate interest as well, and that legitimate interest being a specific concept that has come about through looking to comply with GDPR in individual countries. But like as you look to take the use of data beyond the on-platform experience and into you can call it the off-platform experience. So when you want to use everything you know, or plenty of what you know about users or customers or subscribers, and you want to use it in the wider internet to perhaps, of course, drive relevant advertising on behalf of partners and advertisers, it raises some new questions. And you're suddenly going to be using the intelligence which people happily gave you for their on-platform experience in their relationship directly with your publication or your brand, and you're going to be using it in other people's platforms. And that gets really interesting. And just as AnnMarie said, I think that's where the combination of privacy and security becomes really important. And, like, I'll just reference, like, GDPR in almost all European countries, when it was interpreted into local law, it meant that every organization which handles user data or customer data, every organization had to appoint a data privacy officer, a DPO. Yeah. And in the last 3 years, that's come into like the vernacular of all organizations. And of course, there are very few organizations where the DPO, the data privacy officer, where it's their full-time job to do it. But you are not going to be doing anything with publisher or advertiser data without going through the data privacy officer. And I think what those conversations look like or feel like are very interesting, because it's a brand new stakeholder. Those people didn't exist before.
Yeah, I remember when the GDPR came out back in, and we were kind of going through that process of trying to assign. I was at a different company at that point in time, but who is going to be that person? And it was a very interesting conversation, right? Because I'm sure it was different over in the EU compared to the United States, but the conversation was like, well, who wants to raise their hand and actually take that responsibility? But yes, I absolutely think that's extremely important. You're just seeing it more and more. And, the IAPP, the International Association of Privacy Professionals, they produce a report every year and it's interesting to see how it's evolved year over year of kind of where that privacy role has fit within within organizations and how many more of those roles are out there. And so that's been really interesting to see it. Rob, I'm curious on your side of things, with audiences, to keep it, at the simplest level, essentially that platform was built to live alongside the data and reference the data and have connectors to activate, but no PII is being moved around. Can you expand on why this approach is privacy compliant in today's landscape and why it's so important to have those types of technologies in place?
Absolutely. My pleasure. And there's one fundamental architectural concept related to audiences which unlocks the data privacy and the data security elements. So if you imagine an organization, whether a publisher or an advertiser, they're storing their data most often in a cloud environment. Think AWS, Microsoft Azure, or Google Cloud Platform, right? And that's where the data is stored. And when they want to analyze it and create groups of it, they do it there in Google Cloud Platform, perhaps using BigQuery, or on Azure with Snowflake. And what we wanted to do is bring a capability through audiences, a capability which lived inside of that exact same environment. So audiences as a platform is actually an application which runs natively where a publisher or an advertiser's data already resides. So that unlocks two magical things. So first of all, there's no movement of PII data at all. Okay, so everything is happening in situ where the data already is. And really importantly, then from a privacy perspective, first of all, it means that audiences is not a data processor. So the publisher or the advertiser, they remain at this point the sole data processor of the personally identifiable information, which is really important. And then when you get talking to a data privacy officer or information security, they perhaps have never heard of this concept before, but when you explain it to them, yeah, the lights go on. It's all very exciting. And what one DPO who we recently dealt with for a major omni-channel retail client of ours said, with the greatest respect to marketers, said, this is actually not typical of the madness that marketing bring us. Because usually marketing is saying, hey, we want to copy data and we want to expose it to somebody else's AI and we want to do this. And this actually sounds, in some ways, like really kind of like really straightforward. And like, first of all, being able to do it within the four walls of the owner of the data and not creating an additional data processor, that's just green lights. But then on top of that, because audiences is reading the data in situ, it's reading the latest version of that data, which means that the marketing consents which exist are fresh. They are absolutely live. It's a strange question we often get. Is audiences able to provide real-time feeds of consent and things like that? Well, it's kind of just providing the latest that you have, because it's reading directly from your data warehouse. So if someone consents, then brilliant, we're able to use that data in marketing and advertising. And if someone unconsents, then you're able to immediately remove them and tell Google, the Trade Desk, LiveRamp, whoever you're using, that you don't want to advertise to them anymore. This is so crucial. Whether it's in fact in all consumer areas, especially betting and gaming, or in say anything to do with health, but I mean, really, it should be table stakes everywhere. So the fact that one, audiences is operating from within your infrastructure, which means it's not a data processor, so no PII is going out, and then the fact that you're able to read directly from the live data that you already have and respect all of those consents in real time. That's been really special to be able to be part of bringing to publishers and advertisers.
I think that's great too, because you really touched on something where your data is only as good as it is when it comes in, right? If you're bringing in bad data, you're going to be getting out bad data. But I also think that that's really critical for the marketing teams to be able to understand those approaches and making sure that they're using the data in the most effective and compliant way. And that really sounds like it allows them to do that in real time, which is fantastic. However, on the flip side and playing devil's advocate to kind of the conversation we've been having, this to me would be really a big shift for a lot of people on how they go about selling and marketing, right? We've gone through the process for a long time where it's been send everything to everyone. Hey, we got this list, throw them onto our database. And really it's shifting the conversation to high quality, high value audiences. How does this change this to really almost intelligence-based selling programs? And so what are your all's thoughts on how do you actually communicate that and get the internal teams buy-ins? And, what are some of the ROI stories that you all have seen to kind of help with those conversations?
So this is probably going to be a bit of a debate, but I think that the problem is a little bit in our own heads. When you talk to brands, when you talk to the marketers at brands, what they want more than anything is intelligence. Like they want to understand, that they are targeting the right people at the right time with the right message in the right place, and they're doing that cost effectively. So our packaging, our model of batch and blast and send everything to everybody is really just inherently tied to the way that we like to sell things, but it really isn't reflective of what the brands want. And I think, there's a bit of a challenge there. There's a change management thing to overcome. I mean, at the end of the day, it is proof point after proof point after proof point that when you use a highly targeted audience, you deliver a message that's finally, that's refined to where that person is in their customer journey with their interests and, focused on what the next stage of, where they should be going. You get better returns. Like for me, it all goes back to the actual rubber meeting the road around how does that performance play out? I think, I'll use lead generation as kind of my whipping child right now, but it's, lead generation from a model perspective, we love to sell it at top of funnel. We love to sell like a big webinar with a gajillion leads and here you go. But if you follow that down at the brand level to performance, that tends to perform poorly. If you're selling a nurtured lead program where there's multiple points of engagement, it's finely tuned to the target audience, you're actually selling a much more productive sort of program. So I don't know. When I say it's a little bit our own problem, that's what I believe, that we need to think about this from an industry perspective, from a change perspective.
I absolutely echo that, but I have, the industry has so many challenges, right? And one of them which we see daily is that the use of data in advertising is synonymous, or has become synonymous, with the concept of hyper-personalization and micro-segmentation. And if I put my media hat on for a moment, my advertising hat on, hyper-personalization and micro-segmentation are real enemies of reach and scale. And media and advertising loves reach and scale. Yeah, if you want to buy in search, in social, in programmatic, you're going to be looking for scale. Now, I agree with everything that AnnMarie said about the ability to target individuals at different points in the buying journey in order to drive performance. Absolutely. But when marketers are thinking about this, if they only go down the route of wanting, if they go down the route of, I've got all this data, so I'm going to use it to only do super targeted relevant things to individuals, I think they'll end up feeling kind of shortchanged of the media plan that they create and then the end results. And I think what's really exciting is when you're able to take all of these approaches and build a full funnel approach, so that you're using two of the broadest tactics, which I know AnnMarie and I love talking about. So it's like, first of all, let's exclude people who are not going to be, we know are not going to be relevant for this message. Second of all, let's build a seed for a lookalike to make sure that we're targeting all of the people who we know are going to be relevant, but perhaps who aren't even in our existing data set. And then let's layer in the people who we know we can target a specific relevant message to. And that's where we're filling in the parts in the mid and the lower funnel. Gets really exciting. And then suddenly, a marketing director is presenting a plan to their organization, which has got significant reach, and is going to be able to touch on the acquisition targets that they've got, because it can be a beautiful story talking about how we're using data to be hyper relevant, but the commercial parts of the business are always going to wonder, where is the incremental reach going to come from? Where am I going to get new customers? Where am I going to get new leads? It's great we're keeping our existing leads warm and we're driving them through the process, but that's maybe going to do us great this quarter, but what's happening quarter after and quarter after, so I love it when we're able to use data to inform, the full funnel. And we're having a bit of rejection in Europe about the term funnel actually at the moment, which I think is the last thing that I don't know what they were doing at Cannes, but they were, I think the last thing we need is to talk about that, but whatever it is, that process from awareness through to consideration, and when plans try and address all of those, I think it's great, and data's got a role to play at every step.
We'll be right back. Hey, Audience Architect podcast listeners, mark your calendars for September 26, 2004, and get ready to return to the Windy City to join us at the Chicago Yacht Club for a game-changing event hosted by the Media and Audience Content Marketers Association. Join us as we explore the theme, Unlocking Audience Loyalty, Mastering Email Engagement and Monetization. Picture this: leaders from across publishing, media, and email sharing cutting-edge insights on next-gen audience engagement strategies, unraveling and optimizing key KPIs, innovating premium newsletters and monetization, personalization's implementation at long last, and the influence of email infrastructure decision makers on publishing and media. This isn't just another industry event. This is your chance to learn from the best, participate in dynamic dialogues, and challenge legacy mindsets to seize the opportunities of tomorrow. But here's the catch. This event won't be recorded. You've got to be there in person to soak it all in. Keep an eye out for event announcements and registration details. This is one date you don't want to miss. See you in the Windy City. The Magma event at the Chicago Yacht Club, where innovation meets inspiration. Don't miss it. Save the date, September 26th, and be on the lookout for our promotions and registration info. Back to our show. You both brought up some really valid points and, looking at the data, but it also seems like a lot of this translates back to the importance of having a strong first-party data strategy to collect and leverage the data in place. Where do you really see those strong first-party data strategies just really come to the forefront of everything that people are doing? And how have you seen, other publishers or media companies and technology providers really excel in those areas?
Do you want to go first this time? I feel like I keep jumping in.
I mean, happily. Fundamentally, four areas. So one, very often seems boring, and I mentioned it a moment ago, but exclusion. So just being clear about who you don't want to talk about. Most data sets that publishers and advertisers have for a given campaign, they can identify people they would not want media to be served to. So, hey, for the first time ever using first-party data, let's deterministically exclude those people. It's a great hygienic thing to do in any campaign. Secondly, go for that reach. Don't just target the people who your message is going to be relevant for. I mean, of course, do that, but use what you know about your existing subscribers, users, customers to inform the algorithms on the likes of the Trade Desk, Meta, Google, TikTok. They're able to use those subsets, those seed audiences, to develop massive relevant reach. And on the brand side, for advertisers, we've seen huge uplifts there. In our forecasts, we always, we try and be conservative. So we always, at the top end, we're using sort of 7 to 10 times, but in some instances, it's 20 times, which is really exciting. But all we're doing here is proving a hypothesis. The hypothesis being, if you use what you know about customers, you'll be able to communicate better with those customers, and you'll be able to find more customers who are good like those customers are. I think it's important to prove it, and then I think it's important to scale it.
I think too, one thing, AnnMarie, we've had this conversation before. All names are not created equal, right? For every single campaign, it's not just there's the same value on every single name in there. It's really, where you have to start thinking about that quality over quantity approach, because it may not be the right thing for that person, but it might be for another campaign. And if you're able to actually target and kind of uncover that, then you're going to also help reduce churn, right? And that's an enemy for all of us, is seeing people unsubscribing, seeing people globally opting out, or filing a complaint or whatever that may be. And so I do think it's really important there, Rob, based off of what you were saying, it drives home that not all names are created equal, and really being able to identify those high value audiences, but not only identifying those high value audiences, but understanding why they are high value and how are those high value audiences consuming content? What are those high value audiences consuming as well? I think that's really important based off everything you were just saying.
Yeah, I mean, when I think about the question that you asked around, what are we seeing in terms of strong first-party data strategy in the media and publishing space specifically, which is where we're really, we have a lot of customer base and a lot of energy. The whole idea of better understanding of who your audience members are at a very like human level, but also how do they translate into value? I mean, the media industry monetizes an individual in their audience base a lot of different ways. And the holy grail of, the audience person, because I've been in that seat most of my career, the holy grail was always, how do I assess the value of an individual name? And the reality of data in our ecosystems has been that the data about who the person is doesn't mingle with the data about how are they being monetized. Like, that doesn't live together. And what I'm seeing in the marketplace right now when it comes to data strategy is that more and more of our publishers are looking to get out of the technologies that sort of hold that separation. And they're trying to be more consolidated in the way that they manage their data. Again, Rob mentioned different cloud environments. Well, in a cloud environment, the data about how things get monetized and who's buying what from whom within the publisher's world can live in the same place as the who. So now we've got this is the Holy Grail maybe a possibility that we could start to really evaluate an individual within our ecosystem from a financial perspective? This person is being monetized in all the ways. Like, I need to be exhibiting the utmost care in how I communicate with this individual. And I have a better awareness of the people, the names, within our ecosystem that maybe aren't producing as much value. And how do we provide more care in sort of bringing them into a higher value state? So I think those things go hand in hand. It's like this handshake that we have around value creation. If I'm delivering things of value to you and you're reactive to them, I'm monetizing you highly, but I'm also providing value to you. So it's just, when I think about really good first party data strategy, it's like really treating people like humans in our world, being respectful of them.
Yeah.
Go
ahead, Rob.
Well, I was going to say, I completely agree with AnnMarie from a relevance perspective, treating people as humans, using what you know about them to communicate with them, to use the industry's language, to message to them in the same way as you would if you were speaking to them. I think super powerful, and combination of data and analytics with the type of targeting technologies which are available through advertising. Yeah, we can do that. We can absolutely do that. And we can use all of the brilliant things, just as AnnMarie and team do, all the things we've learned from the past through CRM and through direct communications. We can bring all of that into advertising now, which is really exciting. It's layers and layers though, because then I'm going to say something which bothers me. There is this concept of wear out. So I'm going to be showing too many ads, or if I'm a publisher, I'm going to be, maybe there's a 10% of my audience, which are, they are the buyers or the influencers. They're the people. Every supplier, partner who comes through my door wants to target, high net worth, blah, 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 blah. Okay, cool. Mm-hmm. So, the concept of, I don't want to, bombard these people and, use them too much. Well, I've just got a bit of a sort of, a criticism of that approach, perhaps a critique, which is they're going to get shown advertising anyway. Okay, so it's not like you go, onto you visit a media owner's site or app, and if you're not being targeted in a first party campaign, you don't get adverts. You get adverts; they're just completely irrelevant. Yeah, and we've got a major European airline that we're working with at the moment, and the question isn't so much how do we launch new first party driven campaigns, because they spend over £100 million on search, programmatic, social, connected TV. Yeah, they do all of it. It's just that they don't target any of it using first party data. So what we're doing is combing through all of their existing plans, making them relevant. Yeah. So, and then perhaps there's it's even like a philosophical question, which is you're going to be targeting these users are going to be targeted advertising anyway. So it's not that we must make sure that the advertising we show them is only relevant or relevant only. I'd suggest that the challenge is more, how do we increase the percentage of adverts that they see as being relevant? Because all of those promotional spots on Meta, LinkedIn, etc., they're going to get used, in a targeted or untargeted way. So how can we increase the relevance of the adverts which the user's going to get shown anyway?
I think that's spot on, because just because we're not targeting them, whether they're targeted or untargeted, doesn't mean they're not going to get anything moving forward, right? We see it day in and day out. So I'm curious, especially as I don't know, Rob, I'm sure you keep up with it, but the US has just been coming out over and over again, with every state essentially coming out with their own comprehensive privacy law. Still very much an opt-out approach, unlike the GDPR. But by gathering and engaging and using the data in a privacy compliant way, how have you all seen better outcomes, versus somebody who might not be walking that privacy line as thoughtful as they should be?
Well, you know what? Like, history in Europe, at least, has been up until maybe 5 years ago, very little customer data made its way into advertising at all. Okay, very little user data in a consented way made it into advertising at all. Everything was done using cross-site tracking via third-party cookies, and that felt very easy, but it led to really quite poor targeting. And I would say that GDPR has been a massive force for good in the advertising industry. I mean, of course, respecting user privacy is a good thing, but I would say it's had a hygienic effect to say, hey, all of these cheap ways that we were gathering data and using it for targeting, they're probably not going to be available to you anymore. And it's caused everyone's eyes to be cast actually to where the really good data was, and to think, how do I use my first party data, what as a publisher or an advertiser, a brand, I collected and I should collect, and how can I connect that to advertising? And sure, from a technology, from a data perspective, an engineering perspective, it's going to feel a little bit trickier than just putting a tag on a website. Yeah. So, but the results are not only going to be privacy and security compliant, but they're also going to bring better intelligence to advertising. And all respect to CMOs and others, but I don't think they would have done it. I don't think they would have done it. And in probably like the top 20% of the organizations we see, it's like the last 5 years, through an attention to privacy and security, CMOs are getting closer to the technology and data parts of their organizations. I don't think they would have done that without GDPR. Why would they have? Why would they? I mean, I would say for the 10 years previous, they really weren't. So yeah, and in that way, I think it's been a force for good. AnnMarie?
Yeah, it's funny because I think that there's still a resistance in the US among brands. We have a lot of brand customers as well as publishers. And I think that there is a tier of brand customer in the US who's like, yes, this is a foregone conclusion. It's eventually going to happen. I need to be invested in this. Like, we've worked with a very large CPG firm several years ago, much on the forefront of, how do we really flex, even in a CPG environment where they are disintermediated from the customer, like, how do we flex the small amount of first party data that we have to build a better strategy? But when you look at the statistics in the US of where marketers are at and sort of how they view their first party data strategy, sort of like timeline and evolution, you can see they're resistant to it. They're still thinking, oh, well, Google will come up with some way to make this all work for me. Or this won't actually, cookies won't deprecate. I can't tell you how many conversations I've heard where people are like, well, we'll just see about that. It's to your point, Rob. I think the fact that Europe had this enforced, caused that finality. It's like this is happening. We are going this direction. The ambiguity of it around the U.S. has created this almost like resistance or a lack of focus on first party data strategy. I find it really interesting. I was at a conference actually this couple of weeks ago in Europe, and I was like, it's interesting, like in the US, we're still talking about like, how do we make money with our data? And here we're talking about like, it's more protective, more of a protection message. And they were like, well, Americans innovate and the Chinese replicate and the Europeans regulate. So it's like, oh, that's such a shame.
Okay.
So I think Americans are like, this is stopping our innovation, but it is, where I think that there's some interesting, brand plays around first party data. It's coming in a really creative way, where there's partnerships, there's, collaboration around data. There's, even if I only have a small amount of first party data, I'm still trying to figure out how to make the most of it. But I do think we're way behind the power curve.
I think that's a really good point. I think if anything, it's probably requiring American marketers to be more innovative, kind of the opposite argument there, where it's going to require us to be more innovative. But also, I think there has to be, you touched on collaboration, and I think there has to be collaboration amongst the industry to actually develop industry-wide best practices for privacy. So it's not a dirty word. Right? It's not something that we're seeing as a roadblock. Obviously, other businesses, especially, in the EU, or those even US companies who operate very heavily in the EU, they have created a sustainable business model while prioritizing privacy. Yeah. And I think those use cases and case studies probably need to come to the forefront a little bit more to show users and show, American companies or US marketers that it can be done, and if anything, it can just help drive the innovation that much more.
Yes,
I think there are one false idol that definitely exists in the European Union in Europe, which is, well, isn't Google, Microsoft, or Amazon gonna just like fix this for us? Google most famously with Sandbox, right? And I've got one word which is a brilliant US word, which we increasingly use here, which is antitrust. Yeah. So like Google has its massive cloud GCP organization. And of course, it's also an advertising business. I don't have to tell you guys, but US regulators are never going to allow those two things to actually act as one, right? That's why we have Alphabet, not Google. Fine. Amazon, AWS, is like the best bit of the business. And then there's obviously retail and there's advertising, and advertising is growing massively. Obviously, the same is going to apply there. And that's why they've also got corporate structures there. And then Microsoft, absolutely. And we can't think about, Microsoft and then there's the Bing advertising business. Microsoft advertises massive, is driving the Netflix advertising platform. It's phenomenal. So that antitrust would be my answer. The big tech giants, CMOs, they're not gonna be able to help you. They would have loved to have helped you, but they're not going to be able to help you. Second thing, which we've seen, is a bit of a cliche, but once things make in marketing, once things are about TV, then marketing and CMOs take it seriously. And it's hilarious, right? I love performance marketing, and I love lots of different things, but suddenly now that there's a way to bring first party data to connected TV, like people are listening in a way to us in a way which they never did before, right? They put us in with the backroom boys talking about performance marketing and data and retargeting and all that cute stuff, which is great. Yeah. But the moment that first party data is part of the conversation, the narrative about TV, and now suddenly connected TV is a key part of the upfronts and all of that, like we got kind of like cooler friends than we did before because it's about TV. And do I like that fact? I don't know, but I think it's going to be good for us.
Well, is there anything else that this audience should really be keeping at the top of their minds as it comes to, developing their audience strategies, keeping privacy, privacy by design, keeping that at the very much forefront of their minds as they're doing that, and really just being able to create that sustainable business model? Is there anything else that you want to add? Because I think we've had a great conversation today and there's so many takeaways here. But as we wrap up, any last words around those?
So I'd say, if you're a publisher or an advertiser and you built up brilliant intelligence about your subscribers or customers, the fastest way for you to monetize that data and those audiences is to think about how you do it directly from within your infrastructure, right? It's going, if you're a CMO or if you're a commercial officer, it's gonna require you to hold hands with your CIO, CTO, but that's how you're going to win in this space. Is by approaching this with a marketing and advertising hat on, but also a data and technology hat on, and it's going to be empowering for you, for your organizations and for your careers. I think it's a really exciting time. It's been a good 5 years in marketing and advertising in Europe, and I can only see it having a positive effect in the United States. I'm excited for you.
Yeah, us too. And I would say, Rob's talking about sort of that activation last mile. I would back it up because so many of and I'm speaking mostly to publishers here, so many of our publisher partners have such decentralization of their data. There are silos across the organization, and it's hard to maintain a privacy first, strong first party data strategy where you're eking all the value out of that customer data when it doesn't live in a centralized environment. So how do you get all that value, and how do you maintain privacy and make sure that you're doing it at the highest level? And like Rob said, getting that direct monetization opportunity, if you've got a SS, mess of an infrastructure environment. So I think, that's the other place where we see a lot of energy right now is like, how are we maintaining our first party data, and what is, the infrastructure that we're creating for, we did a webinar about this yesterday, actually, where, we use the analogy of a house. Your house for a person, it's the single most important asset that you have. It is your lifestyle. It should suit your lifestyle. So if your infrastructure is bringing all of your asset together in one place, like a house, then you've got this amazing opportunity to not only abide by the privacy requirements of your audience and how they want to be communicated with, but you've got a deeper understanding, obviously, of your audience and lots more productization opportunity.
I absolutely love that. I really do. I think that's fantastic, both of you. And thank you both so much for your time today. It's been such a joy talking with you, and we very much look forward to any future conversations. Thank you so much. Thanks again to Magma for supporting the Audience Architect podcast. Shout out to our excellent producer and editor, Camilo Duque of Victoria Records, available to work on your podcast, jingle, music production, and videos. I'm Amanda Lansall, your host. The Audience Architect is a content service of MACMA, aka the Media, Audience, and Content Marketers Association. Supercharge your career with MACMA's paid membership. Connect with industry experts, thought leaders, and like-minded professionals. Expand your knowledge and stay ahead with networking, events, webinars, and conferences. Join MACMA today for unparalleled value and professional growth. Check us out at www.the-audience.com. macma.org. Thanks as always to Lisa Pistilli and the gang at Magma.